All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Unified Commerce Unlocked, the future of seamless customer experiences. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Salesforce and Astound Digital and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with SmartBrief, a future B2B company, and I'm so happy that I get to be your moderator today because the retail landscape is evolving rapidly, as is the world at large, right? And a lot of organizations are rethinking the role of commerce across their digital and their physical channels, especially with some of the exciting and very interesting opportunities unlocked by AI and data-driven experiences. Now, today, what we're going to do is take a deep dive into unified commerce. Our expert presenters are going to help us untangle, first of all, what does that actually mean? What does it look like in action, and how you can transform your retail spaces into those immersive and interactive hubs that you've been dreaming about. Our insightful thought leaders here with us today are going to outline some important technologies, some of those human approaches and strategies to help your organization bridge the gap between physical and digital commerce. We're going to jump in and explore some of those key steps towards optimizing your commerce strategy and discuss innovative approaches to creating a personalized experience that will absolutely wow your customers. There is a lot in store for us today. This is going to be such an interesting conversation. I cannot wait to dive in. So what I'm going to do is get through a few important housekeeping points that are going to help you get the most out of our time here with us today, and then we will jump into our conversation. Let's start with a little bit of a tour of your audience console here. So to kick things off, I want to jump over to the right-hand side of your screen. So on the right there, you're going to see three tabs: chat, docs, and Q&A. Let's start in that chat tab because that's my favorite. So the chat tab is where you can get fun and interactive with the other folks here with us today. So we're all part of this wonderful retail industry. That's what we're here to learn about today. We want to talk about unified commerce, and each and every single one of you is going to have a slightly different impression, a slightly different story, a slightly different experience that you can bring to the table today. So please do post if you have a thought, an idea, if you want to kick something around with the folks in the audience. That all happens in the chat tab. You can also just use it to say hi. I see we've got a hi in there from Bala already. Hi, Bala. Great to see you. So please do get those highs and hellos. Let us know how your day is going. We absolutely want to hear from you. So that chat window is where you all connect with each other. Now, another feature that we can use that chat window for is for reaching out to our team. We have the one and only Riley here with us in the background, and she is helping make sure that everything runs smoothly. If you do have any technical issues today, the very first thing you can try is a browser refresh. I promise that will clear out almost all of the usual tech gremlins. But if that browser refresh doesn't work, option number 2 is to use light mode. That's one of the modes that you have available to you on your audience console. So browser refresh, light mode. If those two things are not working, you can post in the chat window and Riley will be there to help you out. She's also just awesome, and feel free to say hi to her in general. You don't have to have tech issues to say hi to Riley. All right, so that's the chat window there. Now, the 2 hops over from there, we've got the Q&A tab. The Q&A tab is where you reach out directly to our speakers. The wonderful presenters that we have here with us today are waiting and watching your questions come in, and they will do their best to get to your questions in our live Q&A session or over live chat response today. They're multitasking, they're presenting and typing simultaneously. So please do get those questions in. So chat is where we interact with each other. We have our fun little conversations happening there. Q&A is where you're addressing the speakers directly. You're getting your questions in directly to the presenters. The docs tab right in the middle there, we've got some cool resources and takeaways, so make sure you spend some time there. And the last thing I want to remind you about on the console is closed caption. We do have closed caption available to you. We've got a variety of languages, so pick a language that works for you, add that support if you would like it. Last but definitely not least, we do have a $250 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here all the way through our webinar in order to qualify to win that prize, and you do need to meet all of the terms and conditions. Those are outlined for you in the docs tab. So if you don't know what the T's and C's are, head over to the docs tab and you can find them waiting for you there. All right, well, that was it for the housekeeping. We jumped through that very quickly because I am so excited to get this conversation going. We've got our wonderful speakers waiting in the wings. I am very happy to introduce you all to Caleb Bryant, Senior Director, Product Management, Commerce Cloud at Salesforce, and Leonard Stevens, Vice President, Commerce and Lead Architect at Astound Digital. Caleb and Leonard, I'm very excited to get into this conversation. I know we've got you guys waiting to jump in here, so let's get you on camera. All right. Well, here we are. We got our wonderful crew out here with us. Caleb, Leonard, thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait to jump into this conversation. And I want to start out with a little bit of a get to know you section because we've just heard names and titles. That's cool. But there's obviously lots more to you both and what we're going to get into today. So maybe, Caleb, if you can kick us off, tell us a little bit more about you and what you're looking forward to talking with our wonderful audience about today.
Sure thing. And thanks everybody for being here. I'm Caleb Bryant. I look after global go to market strategy and growth for Salesforce Commerce Cloud. I've been in the commerce industry since roughly 2008. And I have been both on the product side as well as on the services side, and have been in a variety of different roles everywhere in between. So I'm really excited to participate in this conversation with you, Leonard, today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here as well. Yeah, I got my start, as in the developer side, actually, early 2000s. I was had a Sun Microsystem certification for Java back when that was a thing. After doing kind of the product side and internal IT, I just kind of discovered the commerce side of the world, and in large part, due to a product called Demandware back in the day, which of course is now part of the Salesforce ecosystem, and that really brought into it like a passion that's been kind of burning with inside me for the last 17 or so years, ever since getting involved in the commerce ecosystem. And yeah, currently I'm VP of commerce at Astound Digital. I've been in a couple roles similar to this at some of the bigger agencies out there, and really where I find myself most comfortable is kind of blending that business and technology side of the house together, right? Taking what we know, the passion for commerce, and bringing it in with technology and seeing what we can do for our customers. So, yeah, happy to spend some time today talking about what we can do in that regard.
Oh, I love that. I feel like that's a great place to start because we've got technology, we've got a little bit of psychology and human elements, we've got commerce, and we've got a whole lot of passion. That is a fabulous foundation for a webinar. And we are really kind of taking a deep dive today into this idea of unified commerce. That's where I kind of wanted to start things out. And Leonard, I'm going to keep you on the hot seat here for a second because I'm really curious. Sometimes when we hear about something a lot, it becomes a little bit of a buzzword, and maybe we don't actually fully understand why it's gotten so popular, what it even means. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So maybe let's start with a little bit of that foundation set here with unified commerce. Why is it something that we're all talking about, and what does it actually mean for retailers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super important to kind of clear through the buzzwords, right? There's a lot of buzzwords floating around in the industry. Every year or two, there's a new one that floats around. And I'm not a huge fan of just being a buzzword, but I think sometimes there's a word that comes out and there's more meaning behind it. To me, the unified commerce story is really a continuation of what had kind of started with this concept of omni-channel, right? Where you have multiple channels that are selling, multiple kind of areas where the customer is interacting, but not necessarily always tied together, right? There was kind of these siloed, stratified areas that the customer might interact with, and they might have been great on their own, but unified is really about bringing it together and having kind of a seamless customer journey at any point that the customer chooses to interact. So it's up to their choice, whether it's digital, whether it's in store, whether it's through marketing, whether it's some sort of data interaction that's evoked through a marketing communication and email. And that's really what, to me, is what unified commerce is about. And it's about trying to find that right ecosystem that can support bringing it together in a way that makes sense primarily for the customer.
Yeah, that's a great point, Leonard. And I would agree. I mean, from Salesforce's perspective, unified commerce to us really is connecting the commerce experience across channels, but doing that primarily through data, right? So
Mhm.
we have, of course, Marketing Cloud for engagement, Commerce Cloud, which then covers the experience, the transaction, payments, order management, point of sale, and then certainly other avenues of the Salesforce ecosystem and beyond to really to accelerate the customer journey and keep customers engaged with brands, for long periods of time. So I think, but from our perspective, and certainly from mine, unified commerce for me really is the data that underpins what that experience is. And of course, that is a transaction, right? The customer is providing data to the brand in exchange for a better experience. And then as a result, the brand is therefore, sort of behooven to provide an experience that is more personalized to that customer based on the data that is shared. And so I think for unified commerce, again, yes, we have solutions that our customers leverage every single day that helps them to unify their customer experience. But really, it's the data underneath that underpins everything to build that seamless experience
Mm.
across every single touch point that the customer might engage the brand, and then that interaction that the brand has as a result of the engagement that the customer brings.
I really like that kind of saying that the brand is behooven to do something with that data, right? The customer is inviting you in on an experience that they're taking part in. You've got the data, right? It's our job to help the brands figure out what the next action should be based on that. It's something that the customer has allowed us to see. We shouldn't be forgetting about that, right? When they get into any interaction point of their journey, if the data is there, there needs to be some sort of actionable experience that uplift that's being provided to the customer. So I think it's really important that we do center around this idea of their data is now being captured, but what are we doing with it? What historically have we been doing with it, and how do we make that kind of reflective of what the customer is expecting?
You know, I love this, and I jumped us into a little bit of a detailed look at unified commerce. But kind of what I'm hearing from this conversation here is maybe I'd like to zoom back out a little bit here, because I think we've identified, we're looking at the data and the experience, but we know that retail doesn't exist in a vacuum. And we've got all these global impacts and macroeconomic pressures and impacts that are on everybody these days as humans and professionals. And so I'm going to zoom us back out again. And I'd love to, Leonard, I'm going to ask you, and then Caleb, I'd love to hear from you as well. Can we get into a little bit of maybe some of the obstacles or pressures that retailers might be facing right now on a grander scale, and how they're responding to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of headwinds, right? There's some tailwinds, there's some headwinds, and I think it's changing. It's changing every day, right? I spend a lot of time on the road talking to customers. We're all trying to figure out, exactly how to navigate the marketplace right now. I think the big thing to just really think of is, what tools do we have to leverage that we can, think of it as these levers. We need to start pulling on these levers that we have within our tech stack, within what's been built out for the customers, to try to maximize the reach into our customers, right? Maximize that experience. It's no longer okay to kind of sit back and just wait and hope things kind of turn out the way you want to. You got to take some actions, right? And I think within every headwind, there's always an area of opportunity for certain brands to shine, and it's going to go to those that are being a little more creative, looking into kind of spinning up innovation centers and seeing what they can do with the stack that they have, as well as with some of the additional tool sets that like Salesforce can provide to help maximize what might be a tough position.
Well, and you bring up a phenomenal point. And I was actually just chatting with one of my friends in the space as well, and we were talking about how there's this convergence now of services and software. And of course, there is the delineation of like the software provider, and of course, there's a license associated to that, and there's a contract associated to the services, within an agency. But having said that, where software ends and services begin, that line has become really, really gray. And there's just a ton of overlap of when essentially like what the handoff between what the software provider does and what the services provider does. I think the same is true, especially now, just given the macroeconomic climate that we're in. The same is true for brands. And brands are no longer required, or they're no longer, they don't have the convenience of selecting what channels they would like to participate in based on their analysis of their expected profit within each channel. In most cases, it is now a requirement for brands to engage in the channels that where the consumers are starting to congregate, where they're building communities. And as a result of that, it almost doesn't matter what the profit margin is or the expected profit margin for that given channel. The brand still has to be there, and then once they get there, then they have to reverse engineer back what the profit margin looks like for that channel based on the tech stack, based on the services associated that they're delivering in order to engage customers in that particular channel. So I think there is this, that based on the climate that we're in, there is this like big convergence of, okay, we have to be there, we have to be in these channels engaging these customers, and then now that we've made the assumption that we have to be in this particular channel, what does it look like for us to do that in a profitable way, in a trusted way, in a way that maintains our brand quality and our brand voice, and so on and so forth. But it's not a the decision has already been made for most brands. The decision's been made. The customer expects you to show up. The question is, how are you going to show up? And then it's up to you to figure out how to build the business model around it.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me. It kind of harkens back to like the early days of ecom, right? Where you had the in-store experience versus ecom experience, and not everybody was as ready for the ecom experience. But customers told the brands where they're going to shop, right? And it was up to the brands to be ready and to have that experience waiting for them. And in some cases, they didn't, right? And we kind of know some of those stories. And now, we're kind of relooking at that picture again and saying, all right, what's next? Where do the customers want to go? And we just need to be, we need to find a way to help our brands to be there when those customers show up.
I think what I'm hearing from both of you, and what I think you've both said really well here, is that there's no longer an option to sort of sit back on the sidelines. I think Caleb, you were kind of hitting on this. The innovation is just not optional anymore.
Mhm.
You have to be thinking ahead. You have to be looking at the technology. You have to be looking at the opportunities to meet customers where they're at, instead of, and I really like this, instead of you providing where they should be at. So that means there's no option about being proactive anymore. You have to be proactive. And I think you guys laid out that when we were kind of starting this, that unified commerce is sort of that big innovation that's coming, that next step. But so I want to jump back into unified commerce now.
Yeah.
Understanding where our wonderful retailers fit in this whole grand scheme of the world at large. Now let's go back to unified commerce. What are the considerations for, we've got some wonderful retailers here in the audience with us. What should they be thinking about as they're starting this journey with this now non-optional innovation that they should be approaching? And Caleb, maybe can I get you to kick us off on that?
Yeah, so we talked about it at the sort of the top of the webinar, but it is super, super important. And I'll just say it a different way here. And that is that data unification, that common data layer that underpins the entire customer journey is the investment that provides the greatest ROI for brands, for retailers, because it underpins every channel. And as a result of that exchange between, the customer provides the data, there is an expectation that is provided by the brand as a result of that to engage based on that information. As a result of that data synchronicity, that allows for channels to be more tightly unified depending on how the customer interacts with the brand. So data unification is sort of the required investment, if you will, because then whether you're in a web experience and you're interacting with a brand and looking at a particular um, uh, you know coffee mug, and you're evaluating the new colors on that coffee mug, and then you go into the retail store and you see what options they are, but you also have a profile where you've purchased a few different versions of that mug or another mug. There's an understanding that as a consumer, and the information that I've provided either in my order history, my browsing history, what I've put in my cart, what I what my preferences are that I've shared from an engagement standpoint, how I want you to market to me. My expectation as a consumer is that I've given you all of this data. You as a brand are intelligent enough to take that data, consume it, and then build corresponding actions to interact with me, either with from a human to human connection, or from a sort of digital human to human connection, and allowing for that engagement still to be personalized across the board. Data unification then is the that investment that is really required for all brands in order to maintain that high level of personalization and trust.
Yeah, it's it's really, the siloed excellence is not isn't what we need anymore, right? It's kind of table stakes to be great at commerce. It's table stakes to be great at one piece or the other. But what's tying it all together, right? It's the data that our customers have trusted us to work with, and they're expecting us to take that data and turn it into an experience that makes it easy for them, right? Don't make them work for a purchase, right? Make it easier for them to understand where they're at within the customer journey, whether it's just simply finding a product or finding out where that product is in the shipping cycle, or finding out what the next product needs to be. Meet them where they're at, right? And I totally agree with you there, Caleb. Right? It's the data is their data is being collected, right? It's about how we're actioning on it, and moving away from, again, those siloed experiences and tying it together, utilizing the data that we have.
So, what is then, if we look at the where we were at with a movement towards, and I really like siloed excellence, that's standing out for me. If we now are moving towards this more unified experience, what's the impact that folks in the audience can expect to see? What are the opportunities that open up stepping away from that siloed excellence into the unified commerce experience? And Caleb, maybe if I can get you to kick us off on that one.
In short, loyalty. I think that's
Ooh.
what retailers, brands, consumer goods brands can expect as a result of investing in a more unified commerce experience. The output of that is loyalty. So I
Mm.
think about another great Salesforce commerce customer, Sonos. Um, I have probably, I don't know, 15, 20 different Sonos speakers in my house. And
What?
because, yeah, don't ask. But anyway, so they're
I
in
want to
here.
come to a party at your house, Caleb. Just like
Yes.
music.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's Bluey everywhere. I've got 3 kids. So don't
Oh, so yeah,
don't
you're not
think it's
having
like
like
this
dance
full
parties.
immersive experience of like what I want to watch. It's just like fully immersive Bluey. That's what's happening in my house,
All
which
over. If you want
Disney
360
happens to
Bluey.
be a Salesforce customer too. So yeah, it's full on Bluey. But I think the output, the outcome is loyalty,
Yeah.
because every single speaker, every single subwoofer, center console, whatever, uh, that I purchase across any different channel that I purchase those items from, I then identify that product to my profile within the Sonos app. I allow for the all of my sort of speakers to be paired up to different groups, to different rooms. I can then locate like how I'm interacting with all those different products that I've purchased as a result of connecting them to the app. So it doesn't even matter if I bought that speaker
Mm-hmm.
in a web experience. It doesn't matter if I bought it from a local retailer that might have had that speaker on sale. Doesn't matter if I bought it from a third party marketplace, which again goes back to brands can't show up where they want to anymore. They have to show up across all channels. Like we saw a bunch of brands pull out of third party marketplaces for a period of time, but a lot of them are going back.
Mm.
Now, those third party marketplaces had to do some work to increase the level of trust. so that the exchange between, okay, now I'm going to allow for my brand to be listed on your marketplace. In order for the brand to be able to do that, there had to be the increase of trust and how that brand was expressed, the type of products that were fulfilled on the third party marketplace. All of that had to level up. So now that it is leveled up, the expectation is, okay, now you're going to meet me on that channel. So again, agnostic of channel, I I can still connect that product to my profile as a Sonos user, and it doesn't matter where I bought it from. And clearly, I'm loyal to that brand. I apparently have too many speakers, but we just watch a ton of Bluey. That's it.
Hey,
So I
you
think
gotta do.
that's the output is loyalty, right?
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it is just to sum it up as loyalty. I mean, the easiest new sale you're going to get is from a customer you already have, right? Why try to start fishing for new customers solely simply because you're not retaining them, right? Retain them, and then kind of work on getting those new customers. But why lose something you already have? It's a competitive market space. Just once someone starts kind of looking outside of your little ecosystem, right? It's kind of hard to pull them back, right? And so I think that's a great way to put it, Caleb, is, tie it back to this just concept of general loyalty, right? Whether that's through programs or whether it's through just having a great experience.
Well, and just to sort of do a little jumping off point on there, I think also in as part of that, within that loyalty, of course, there is, the we're we're also still in this interchange of data.
Mm.
And as we're exchanging data as consumers, giving it to the brand is then giving us better experiences back. Also, in that, then presents a massive opportunity in what I've been calling the new era of commerce, which is the agentic commerce era,
Mm.
that now allows for like what's the next wave of unified commerce is building in that digital labor, right? It's building in agents to interact with me as a consumer. So if I do have an issue with a speaker, which Sonos I never have, they always pair great, but if I did have an issue with one of those speakers, then I can either go on the app or I can go online and I can initiate a like a customer service request and start interacting. And that interaction is either going to be with a human or it's going to be with an agent. And I've given this example in the past. Agents, when prompted correctly and with the right amount of data, they can provide a much more seamless, much better customer service experience than, frankly, a human can because it's going to do it more predictably. It's going to do it based on the expected pathway to get from open issue to resolution. And then you can build in all these other components as a result of that. Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, it's like really it's unlocking your data, right? It's able to act on the data in a way that's better than you and I can. We can only look at so much in a certain amount of time, right? But AI is really looking at a much larger set of data that you've gotten from your customers, whether it's dozens of different orders and interaction points, and pulling that together into an answer and an experience that's tailored based off of all of that information. It used to be that this data was just being collected into data lakes, turning into data swamps. And what did you do with that, right? It was too hard for an individual or customer service rep to just look through thousands of records, right? Well, put AI on top of that, let it understand what's happening in a much more fast, much more specific and prescriptive way, and then interaction with the customer. So to me, it's really just unlocking actionability on your data through AI. That's really what it's doing, and it's so much more powerful than I think it's even understood at this point.
Okay, I was going to ask you guys about AI a little bit later on because we can't have a conversation without talking about AI at some point. We have to get there. But since we're already kind of dancing around it, maybe can we chat a little bit more about how AI fits into this whole picture?
Yeah, I was going to jump in on one more thing on AI too, which is even from the customer perspective, right? Which is this idea of kind of AI as a channel and the way customers
Yeah.
are shopping now, right? How many of us are using ChatGPT, as a replacement for what we were normally doing a web search for, right? So I think we can all see the power of AI both as a customer perspective and then in the interaction point from the platform interacting back to the customer. There's two sides of AI here, right? There's a lot more data being taken into account as part of the purchasing experience, and a lot more data being taken into account as part of the customer servicing experience as well. So there's a lot to explore here, and we could probably have a whole session on that alone. But I'll turn it over to Caleb now before I take this too far.
Well, I mean, you nailed it. I think the two areas that we can, at least for right now, see big opportunities in. One is like, how do I more predictably action off of aggregate data, and
Mhm.
then how can I also more predictably action off of uh, personalized data. And then the layer on top of that, I think, is I've got all of this historical data, again, both at the profile level and then also at the aggregate level. Should I take action as a result of my historical data as a customer or my in session data, where I might be behaving like a different type of customer profile, right?
Mm.
And I might look like one type of customer in my historical data, but now if I'm interacting with a brand in a totally different way, I might look like a different type of customer. So while my historical data might say one thing, uh, the in session data might look entirely different. And so I think there's also this opportunity to be able to personalize to me, but then also personalize to my interactions.
Mhm.
And so,
Interesting.
going back to, the mug scenario, and again, Salesforce commerce customer here, Yeti, I've purchased a bunch of different Yetis for different, uh, uh, backpacking and hiking trips, and when we've done kayaking, or um, when we've done camping with the kids, and so we need a bunch of different types of like water bottles, as well as like the mobile pour over coffee,
Yes, that's
filtration
vital for
set, all
camping. You
that.
need
Well, of
coffee.
course.
That's important.
Right, exactly. So then, like, depending on how I'm going to interact with that brand,
Yeah.
I might come to them with for a different reason. And based on that uh, first attempt at getting to a more personalized experience, whether it's through search or through my click through history in that session, um, pick a sort of scenario or combination thereof, then my session might need to look different as a result of how I'm interacting, even though I might have purchased in a totally different way. Uh, I could riff on that for a while, but Leonard, I know you've got opinions on this. I think
Yeah.
that's a phenomenal opportunity for both agents, but then also like how we prompt the
Mhm.
agents in those types of scenarios, so that like we can still react at speed, but then also maintain these high levels of trust where
Yep.
that consumers are expecting from brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you think about like an individual maybe purchasing for members in their family or purchasing for their kids, right? And it's entirely kind of different use cases that they're interacting with the brand for, right? It's context awareness of what that customer is based on what that day is and what's happening, right? You could be going to a brand buying something casual, or maybe you're looking for something business or for a gift or for a birthday, and that's where that data comes into play, right? Helping kind of craft, this dynamic persona, if you will, for that customer as they interact with you based on the data it knows about what you're trying to accomplish, and meet them there at that point. I think another thing too is, having been in this space for a couple years, people grow with the brand, right? The
Mm.
demographic kind of changes with the brand, and I think it's always a fear that brands will outgrow, or their customers will outgrow their brand. And the solid brands are the ones that are still around, right? Interacting with the customers and meeting them at their point, while also understanding there's maybe a new generation moving into the brand, and they need to meet them at a different point, right? So there's different customers even within a segment that a brand might think they understand.
Leonard, you actually just hit on an audience question, and I know we're going to do some audience questions at the end, but I'm going to sneak this one in because we had a few folks wondering about generational differences. So maybe is there how do we approach? I mean, I keep hearing that Gen Z has no brand loyalty, or maybe that's Gen Alpha. What that the young people have no brand loyalty is maybe
Does
creating an
anybody these
ease.
days? I don't
No,
know.
yeah, good call.
Just kidding.
It's all is creating these smoother experiences a way that you can create loyalty for these younger generations that are looking for ease and cheap? Is that the way to reach them, or are we wrong? Are they actually a little more loyal than we think they are?
I think people are able to engage with brands quicker than they ever have before, right? Which
Mm,
I think is partly what kind of turns into this idea that there is no brand loyalty, right? You can go on Instagram and see, do some doom scrolling at night and see 15 different brands advertised to you. You're being exposed to brands faster than ever before, right? It's there's got to be some way to kind of cut through that noise and say, all right, who is our customer and how do we get back and retain that customer versus just kind of letting them scroll on to the next piece. So while I don't think that's the entire story there, I think that's part of it. You do kind of see a lot more brand experience. I also think tying into the whole unified picture, right? There's kind of a reevaluation of what in stores mean, what malls mean, right? There's some interesting trends coming around that space that I don't think we've seen in a while, where now they're being forced into an in-store experience that's quite frankly in many cases kind of subpar. I was doing some brick and mortar retail shopping recently after I had purchased something online and it was the wrong size. And I'm like, okay, I'll just return it in store and then I'll double check to make sure I'm actually going to get the right size. And, the experience was less than ideal. I had to return it and they had to give me a gift card and an in store credit and then use that to swap out all while sitting at the register. And, that just makes you wonder, maybe this is part of the issue too, right? We're not meeting uh, current generation, new generations of customers at the experience level that they're expecting from whichever channel that they're engaging with, whether it's Instagram or whether it's in store, right? So that all comes back to, in my opinion, to brand loyalty, to brand retention. It's too much now to have one bad experience in one of those channels. That's enough to lose a customer.
I totally agree. And there's an apparel brand that's not a Salesforce Commerce customer. Um, but having said that, I love the brand. And
Mhm.
so all of my like button down shirts are this particular brand, right? And they've got an in-store experience, and they've got a their own first party experience, and then selective sort of curated third party web retailer experiences as well. And it's one of those brands where I just wish that they would market to me based on my loyalty. Because every time I go to Austin, and I'm going to go to Austin again here in the next few days, I go into their store every single time and I purchase at minimum 5 new shirts, which is ridiculous. But I do it anyway because I'm so loyal to them. They got the new like these all these new designs, and it is what it is. You can clearly see that I'm easily marketed to. Um, but I will still do that, and I'll go on the website and I'll see their stuff in like third party marketplaces, and I'm loyal to that particular brand. But they have never marketed to me as a loyal consumer,
Mhm.
and I think that's a huge miss, right? They could easily like turn me into a VIP customer and give me a like whatever that lifetime VIP customer sort of accreditation looks like as relates to rewards, but it's never occurred. And so whether either their technology is limited and not allowing for that VIP customer to surface up like, hey, this Caleb has been in our store 5 times in the past year, and his average basket size is X, and he also goes online, and his basket size is Y on there, and so his overall lifetime value is this. But he opens emails and he opens text messages, But what have we done beyond that?
Yeah.
Beyond treating him like a first time customer. And I think that's still like with these high growth brands that are coming up in the social media sort of marketing generation, that's still an opportunity where it's a miss for these brands not to connect with their consumers beyond treating them as that first transaction customer.
Customers want to be loyal, right? That just means we've had a great experience, right? And if there's some gap there, there's a question of what kind of experience you're having. It doesn't mean they've had like an adversely negative experience. It just means there isn't that kind of next level great experience. There's so much stuff that's table stakes in the industry now. You've got to ascend above that in order to be what is now considered a great experience, right? But who doesn't want to be loyal if you're having a great experience, right? Of course, you're going to go back.
I love that, Leonard. Sometimes I think we talk about consumers so often. Well, first of all, and consumers are us, right? We are consumers, but also I think sometimes we forget that they're human beings. And I know I'm very guilty also of speaking about younger generations as if they're not humans, because there's all these. Well, sometimes they don't speak like humans. There is that. I still don't know what skibbity means. But there is. I think with these younger generations, at the end of the day, they still want connection. They still want to be seen. They still want to have, Caleb, if you walked into that store and somebody said, Caleb, welcome back, how good would that feel? Even something that simple. And that hasn't gone away in a generation gap.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really important to remember. And actually, Caleb, I think maybe I'd like to zoom in a little bit on where you were just like, let's go back to that journey of you walking into that store that you've been to 100 times or maybe more, an entire closet's worth of times. And when you walk in and you go through the whole
No, it's just
experience,
100 purchases.
100 purchases. Yes, that's important. Okay, so yes, that's where I want to go. Purchases. Talk to me about the point of sale. Talk to me about the checkout experience. And we've hit a lot on the journey, but that checkout experience, and Leonard, you were kind of touching on this with the return and the exchange. That's very important. Obviously, that's the finishing touch there, and I think that's your last touch point. So that's also what's going to feed back into that sense of wanting to return. So Caleb, give us
Totally.
some
Yeah.
ideas around how to improve that point of sale experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, great example. I have already given my like customer profile information to them. If there was, say, for example, an opportunity for that brand, say I landed in the, Austin airport and I'm sitting on the tarmac, I'm waiting to go to my gate and I get marketed to, whether it's an SMS push or like an app push, whatever. Welcome to Austin. Uh, can't wait to see you in the store. While you're waiting, or like in your Uber or whatever, build a basket
Mm-hmm.
of items, and then come try them on. We'd love to share with you a few different new designs that you don't have yet based on your purchase history. Hello. And so then if that's the case, then I'm going to then schedule time to go, and not only am I going to interact with the site or the app, I'm going to build a basket. I'm going to see what the new items are, and then I'm going to load up my sizing associated to those, and then I'll schedule time, go in there, and be able to, like, as soon as I walk through those doors, guaranteed I'm going to be purchasing something, as opposed to just looking at a previous like web session where, where a potential customer, if I'm not, if they haven't identified me, hasn't done anything. And so I think that's an opportunity where you can curate the entire experience up to the point of sale, and then as soon as I check out in store, you've connected the channels, you've allowed for the monetization of the brick and mortar store off of digital interactions, and I think that, quite frankly, is the opportunity to connect, even just a few components of that. The engagement side, if you're doing like sort of push notifications or SMS, you're doing the transaction side. From a web standpoint, if you're interacting with the different products on the web catalog, You might be building a basket, reserving it through initial credit card authorization, um, and then you're also connecting into the in-store experience, and where I might, you know, do the final settlement of that authorization in store. And then maybe some items are not available in my size, but I've tried on different designs of the same sort of shirt, and they don't have those in the size that I want, but they're going to ship them back to me. Now I've engaged the order management side too. So I've picked up maybe three out of the five, and I'm walking home with those three. But two of them are going to be shipped back to my house, or frankly, even better, shipped back to my hotel room if I'm staying there for a couple, 2 or 3 days. Now there's this opportunity to engage not just the marketing side, the commerce side, the point of sale component, the app side, but then also the fulfillment aspect. And I can orchestrate how that order ultimately is getting fulfilled. I think the technology is there. Like, we've got the technology, we've got great agencies like Astound that can help you connect the dots across the board. So using Salesforce, using Astound, you could do that as a brand, right?
Yeah,
It's not that like the technology needs to get there.
yeah, we found us, so many of our customers are sitting on that technology, right? The technology's at their fingertips, right? Whether it's through Salesforce or something that maybe they already have with Salesforce, they just haven't unlocked yet. But kind of dipping back on that point of sale thing, right? That used to be the most blind customer experience you could come up with, right? Someone comes in the store, you know nothing about them, right? You're kind of starting completely from scratch. They could be your most loyal customer ever. They could be new. They could have had a good or a bad experience, and you want to kind of adjust what that outcome is. That's there's no reason, or quite frankly an excuse anymore, for a customer to come into the store now and for us, the brands not to know something about them, or at least be able to access quickly something about them. It used to always be just for the digital channels. Oh, we know something about them when they're on e-commerce, right? Um, but that's no longer the case anymore, right? Through this ability to have connected data through the entire process, from interacting from a marketing cloud email to the point of sale, to order management, back into the e-commerce experience. The data is there for everyone to be able to use. It's just a matter for the brands to kind of feel empowered to say, "Hey, let's start engaging in some conversations, right? With somebody to help us get to that point, because we know it's there. It's just not unlocked yet."
So both of you, I've heard you say this, the data is there, the technology is there, but I'm guessing that there's some folks here in the audience, and I'm seeing some questions come in along these lines, that are saying, sure, but it sounds overwhelming. It feels like we can't do that. It feels like the gap between what you're describing and where we're at is too big. So if somebody out there in the audience is thinking, how do I actually action this wonderful
Mhm.
unified experience that you've been describing? What would you suggest? How do we actually make this a reality? And Leonard, maybe I'll get you to kick us off on that.
Sure. I think the most important thing is just not to freeze, right?
Mm,
There's no need to, freeze or panic that it seems insurmountable, really, right? I mean, what's the way to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time, right? And I think if you're engaging the right partners, and I'd like to say Astound is one of them, we can help you understand what that is. Often there's a lot of just kind of low hanging fruit that's available, um, for some quick wins. And once you start pulling on those, it turns into kind of, here's the next opportunity, and here's the next piece to do, and you can kind of roadmap your way out. But in many cases, there's a lot of quick wins, and it's just important not to kind of think of the whole thing as an overwhelming part, right? Don't freeze. Keep the innovation centers open. Engage the right partner, and find out what that next small step is, and that next small step is going to unlock a lot of other steps that are, I guarantee, much more readily available and accessible than most people might think.
You said it, and I love it. Don't freeze,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And I may not look like it, but I've done a little boxing just to keep in shape. But I haven't gotten punched in the mouth yet. The but the whole key is, like, you got to continue to keep moving so that you don't take one right to the kisser.
Yep.
There's this The same is true with brands. You've got to keep moving. You've got to keep fighting. You've got to look for the holes to engage your customer. And I think they've spent the past, let's call it, like 5-10 years unifying their data. Jess, sort of going back to your point, they've spent a bunch of time unifying their data. They're like, okay, now I've got this big data lake, and Leonard, to your point, now it looks like a data swamp because it's just sitting there, and the data is not moving. The data is not like it doesn't have a direction to it, and it's not being surfaced up in ways that it can be consumed. And like, I don't want to consume this data because it looks like a swamp. So I think there's an opportunity now for to add on the agentic layer on top of your data to be able to through intelligent prompts surface up that
Mhm.
data in meaningful ways to your customers, and you can allow for that data to move, right? And that's like, you can go build an agent yourself, or you can engage for a more I would say for a more elegant approach, you can engage a partner like Astound to help you to build out agents across your entire customer journey, even if you do it in bits and pieces along the way. That's the opportunity, right? The opportunity is to eat the elephant one bite at a time, build agents along the customer journey one at a time to allow for that data to start to get surfaced up in meaningful ways so that you as a customer and then you as the brand are delivering on the promise, and then you as a customer
Mhm.
are receiving the even sort of an even greater level of satisfaction on the expectation that you're looking to have based on the interaction with that particular brand. So I think that's the answer. Now it's a relatively new answer, but that's also why you're seeing the market do cycles like this really, really fast around AI and around unified commerce, because it's such a massive opportunity for both for brands to be able to generate more top line revenue and
Mhm.
bottom line results from a profit margin standpoint, especially in today's macroeconomic climate. Again, great opportunity to like find some wiggle room in your profit margin. And then also for consumers too, it gives this great opportunity that I think it's a massive unlock. It's just a massive unlock that we're going to continue to figure out as as an ecosystem and as an industry. But there's so much goodness that comes out of it that I think we're going to find even more ways here in the near future to sort of figure out like what's the best way to build that unified commerce experience. It's going to be inside of that, and we're just going to find a whole bunch of unlocks across the way.
And if you're early in your journey, maybe another way to kind of get fired up about it is that these first steps are, some of the most exciting, right? You see some of the
Mm,
fastest returns from it, right? You're all of a sudden now actioning data that you haven't actioned before. You're starting to put AI processes on data that has been historically a swamp, right? You're going to see some of those immediate feedback as to how your customers are behaving, and probably start to re-understand your brand in the way that you haven't done before. So if you even if you're at that early step, right, you're not that far along in the unified commerce path. It doesn't mean that these first steps are going to be kind of the grunt work, and you're just trying to keep afloat. Those are some of the steps that you really start to understand and measure your business by, and then from there you can start really setting that trajectory. And like Caleb was saying, meet your customer where they're going to be, rather
mm.
than wait to kind of find out where that customer is at and try to catch them there, right? Meet them there. Once they're there, you're now, kind of leading that place. It's a competitive space out there, right? I think everybody feels that. And it's easiest to just start unlocking some of that data to better understand your customer and keep them than it is to try to guess where they're going to go.
Well, I think you guys are hitting on. We had gotten a question that I was going to ask you, but I feel like you just answered it. And I love this question. It was coming in saying, I there's a lot of uncertainty in the world at large. I feel paralyzed. I feel paralyzed by indecision. And what do I do? And I think you guys have answered that for our audience today. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of folks can relate to. So I'm glad that somebody asked that. Good for you, for acknowledging that. And what I'm hearing is keep going. Just don't,
Yep.
I mean, and
Nope.
that's easy. That's kind of like saying cheer up, I guess, if you're feeling
Yeah.
paralyzed, just move.
It's analysis paralysis, right? The great
Yeah.
thing is, like we at Astound, we can help with that, right? We see so many different customers and so many different scenarios. It might be a little bit more clear to us where the next steps are. It
Mm.
was pretty easy to do some quick engagements and just to start understanding your data and what those next steps are. So there's help out there as well in the ecosystem. It's not just you're in it on alone, right? Caleb and his team and my team, and there's some great resources to kind of lean on to say what should we do for the next step, right? We know we need to do something. We've been stuck in this analysis paralysis cycle ever since the pandemic kind of threw everybody's senses off as to what should the market be doing. We're seeing what's happening. We're staying on the forefront of it, and we're always looking to help out our brands in moving to that next step.
Leonard, I love what you just said there. And you said senses. And that is when I heard that, the way that I processed that was our digital senses are getting heightened.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think in today's climate, our digital senses are getting heightened. And because we're being forced to get really, really sharp and really, really smart at how we're engaging with customers. So and the way that we're doing that, the technology that we're doing that, the mechanisms that we're leveraging in order to do that, the way that we're generating our marketing assets, for example, and the way that we're storing and distributing those assets, the way that we are allowing for the buy this item to be democratized across various channels. Like
Hmm.
we're having to get really, really sharp on figuring out the methods and measures in which we engage our customers. And so as a result of that, our digital senses are having to go up, right? And
Yep.
we got flooded during COVID, and it was just like buy everything online. You know what? And so it was like this massive spike, and we saw that. And of course, it normalized, but then we've sort of been sitting, and sort of sort of jogging, if you will, for a period of time in digital. And now I think again, just sort of where we're at within the market based on, customer sentiment, based on purchasing power, based on supply chain pressures, and so on and so forth. It's like that movie, The Sixth Sense, right? And you get to the very end of it, and of course, like you're totally freaked out. But I think our digital senses are going up,
Yep.
and they're being forced to get really, really sharp, and we're starting to say, okay, now in this new economy, what can I do?
Hmm.
how
Yep.
can i how can I engage this customer in a new way, test it, build a model around it, and then scale it, but then also have the flexibility of being able to pull back and then redeploy those resources in a new capacity as soon as sort of that channel dries up, pull back those resources, test, and then scale in a new way.
Yeah, it's being able to evolve fast, right? Our senses, I think, are heightened because there's so much things to sense now, right? There's so much data coming in. There's so many data points to try to understand, and the question is, all right, are you going to action on those, and how quickly can you action on those, and do you have the platform and the ecosystem to support actioning on those? So it's almost like a little bit of a sensory overload in a way, right? Where I think that's partially what's driving analysis paralysis is maybe there's a little bit of apprehension, a little bit of fear, but I think it's also there's so much data now. Like, how do you sort through that, and what does that mean? And also being positioned to have the right tool set to make that even happen, right? Unified commerce, to kind of take a step back, right? It's across the digital channels, it's across the in-store channel, it's across marketing, it's across data, it's across AI, it's across AI as a channel, right? It's bringing all those pieces back together without kind of overloading your without overloading your senses, is by making sense of what you're hearing in the market and just reacting to it. So
Because I hate saying these words because I would love to keep going with this. And I feel like there's clearly a lot more that we could unpack with each one of these elements here. But we are coming to the end of our time. We've gotten to a few audience questions as we've gone along. I kind of want to just try sneaking in one more quick question because there's a lot that we're not getting to. A reminder to everyone out there that all of the questions that you're sending in, we are going to get your responses back. We're going to get all of your questions sent to the team. So you will get answers back via email. So please keep those questions coming in. And I know there's a lot that we're going to have to leave behind today, but sneaking in maybe a lightning round answer. If there was, we got a question from someone in the audience saying, hey, how do I justify this to my leadership team? What's the ROI that they can expect to see? Is there sort of a quick and easy answer on the ROI for our audience here?
So I'll answer from the software side. The answer is yes.
Mm.
And the you know from a Salesforce commerce perspective, like there's a bunch of sort of TCO ROI calculators that we leverage within the sales process, and so a few different assets that we have available. But I think that and Leonard can answer from the services side, but I think from the software standpoint, as we continue to move more from a digital economy perspective towards consumption models, like yes, there's going to be sort of consumption commitments along the way to software, but at the same time, the way that you can leverage Salesforce Commerce in particular allows you to be able to like test, learn, and grow, and then seek and then get adoption along the way. As you continue to scale into, say, for example, it's a new market that you're going after, you can do that with the technology that you have, with the way that you can take advantage of that technology today, based on our current models. I think the opportunity then is to allow for brands to continue to be even more flexible in the way that they use best of breed technology from Salesforce Commerce in particular, and then at the same time engage with leading agencies like Astound to be able to do the same thing from a services standpoint to help them to better enable that technology on behalf of the brand. But Leonard, don't let me speak for you.
Yeah, I think there's a similar thing kind of in effect. First of all, we see what's happening in the market, right? We're working with lots of brands, so we can help get those initial steps that we know there's ROI for, and it usually comes from looking at a little bit of your ecosystem, looking at what the brand's trying to do, and understanding the data that's and the levers that aren't being pulled, right? Helping you set up with a plan that gets you that initial result, and then from there, it's really a cyclical process, right? Once, like I was saying earlier, once you make those initial wins, which we can help you understand what those are and what will get you that initial ROI, then it's about taking that data and building on that, coming up with the next piece of the roadmap, right? We're very interactive with our customers, doing a customer advisory board, and just kind of working back and forth to see what everybody's hearing in the ecosystem to try to continue to help refine those starting points, but then also working with the customers to help them understand where they should go next. And I'm a data-driven person. Astound is as a whole as well. So we're looking at the return from these, and then just constantly tweaking it and pushing it forward and forward, while looking at it as well as kind of the technology stack that you have at play within the Salesforce ecosystem, and how we can leverage those items further. So, I think, to me, that's an easy answer. We see this win constantly. It's really about taking that first step and understanding that no, there is more juice to be had. Like, it's, you just work with the team, figure out those first steps, and just kind of start making it happen, and you kind of get that snowball effect.
Well, I love that. And I think what I'm hearing at the end there that's really standing out for me is you don't have to do it alone. If you are feeling overwhelmed, there are people who have the right ideas and the right technology and the right, maybe that outside viewpoint to help you get there. And so not letting that stop you, and taking a step. And maybe a great first step is to visit the website, learn a little bit more about Astound Digital. We've got some links in the docs tab as well, so folks can learn a little bit more. Caleb and Leonard, do you want people to reach out to you? Do you want people to visit the website? What's a good next step?
Absolutely, any which way. Reach out to the website, reach out to me directly. We're happy to talk. I'm happy to have one-on-ones as well if there's just a little bit of a closer conversation that's needed.
I love
Same
it.
thing.
So,
Unified communication.
Perfect. Yes, unified communication. If you want to talk to Caleb about great shirts or Bluey, he's super into that. I want
I'm
to thank
super
both.
into Bluey.
Super into Bluey. Yeah. If you want to do some like detailed cinematic reviews. Well,
Honestly, I think I've probably seen every single episode at least a dozen times, and there's over 50 episodes. So there you go.
I'm sorry,
okay.
but
I've never seen a single episode, so
You're
I'll
missing
do my
out.
homework.
You're missing out. Great Salesforce customer.
I'll come better prepared for our next webinar. We'll get into AI and Bluey.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to it.
Well, Leonard, Caleb, thank you guys so much for being here with me today and giving some wonderful ideas for our audience. I know we've all really enjoyed it. Lots more questions we're going to send your way, so stay tuned for that, and you guys can follow up. Thanks again for being here with us.
Good. Appreciate it.
Boy, it's just so fun when we get to talk to people who are truly enjoying the topics that they're here to explore with us, when they are bringing that passion and excitement, and all of us get to be a part of the conversation with them in such a unique and conversational way. For me, these types of webinars are the absolute best, when we feel the speakers bringing that excitement and we get to jump on board with that. And also, and as I mentioned before, when it impacts us not just as professionals, when it impacts us as human beings, right? This is something that's fun to think about your own. Caleb giving us that great example of buying a shirt and his own journey as a customer, and how that plays into what he takes action on as a professional, what he's bringing, the options that he's bringing through Salesforce. And that, I think, is such a cool connection, when we get to see our personal lives and our personal habits coming into play in our professional world. And today, I think we got some really exciting ideas, some really cool ways that we can kind of bring some new innovation into our lives as retailers and as consumers. So I hope that you're all pumped up and ready to learn a little bit more. I see some great comments coming in. I love that, Minu. I love that, Amy. Thanks, Kyle, for that participation. It's so cool to see all of you enjoying and resonating with where we're at today. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do visit the astounddigital.com website. There's a link for you in the docs tab. You can click right there, right on that main kind of hero banner. There's a link to the Agentforce page. So if you want to learn a little bit more about Salesforce and Astound Digital, head to that Agentforce page. Lots of cool exploring to do there. So make sure you click around and get some of those resources. Reach out to Astound Digital and ask some questions. The other thing I want to point out, if you haven't seen it already, there is a survey that we're going to open up. We would love to hear from you. So please do let us know, give us some feedback. And we absolutely want to make sure that we're hitting you with the information that you need as you need it. So let us know how that went for you. The very last thing that I'm going to do is a prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card that we'll be giving away to someone who is here live and present at the webinar. And that special someone is Ryan Dowling from Georgia. Ryan Dowling from Georgia. Congratulations to you, Ryan. Now we're going to follow up with you after we wrap the webinar, which is coming up real quick here. So stay tuned. And with that, on behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to once again thank Salesforce and their partners Astound Digital for making this webinar possible, especially to our wonderful speakers here with us today, to Caleb and Leonard, for bringing so much energy and passion and excitement and hot tips about children's cinema that apparently I've been missing out on, and now need to go do some homework and explore Bluey a little bit. But I had a great time with all of you today. And so my biggest high fives and thank you are going to all of you out here in the audience for taking time out of your day, for making space to come and be a part of this conversation, to learn, to start to think about breaking down these silos and looking at this unified experience, to look at what we're doing now and what has sort of just become table stakes, and then where we go from here, how we create these standout experiences, these wow experiences through personalization, through that unified commerce approach. And I'm really excited to see what all of you do. I'm sure that I will be feeling the effects both through conversations like this and as a consumer. So I look forward to that. And I most of all hope that I get to see all of you at a webinar again soon. But until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.